Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Victober live show reading sprints, welcoming in Victober. And I'm just so delighted to be here and with these lovely co-hosts. So I guess maybe I could have each of you introduce yourselves. Katie, as the creator of Victober, would you like to? I feel like you need no introduction, but
Hello, hello. Yes, I'm Katie from Books and Things. Excited to be here with another Victober. Very exciting.
Yay!
What else do I have to say? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it speaks for itself. And then Roz.
Hi, I'm Roz, and this is my second Victober as a host. I'm still a bit kind of like awestruck, at being a Victober host because I've had such joy taking part in Victober, sort of the years before that. So.
Oh, thank you, Roz. It's lovely to have you along. And then I asked two kindred spirits to be here with us also. And so, Milena, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm Milena from the channel Milena Reads, and I think this will be, I wasn't sure, my third, but I think it's going to be my fourth Victober, and the second Victober that I'm joining Kate for Reading Sprints. So I'm very happy to be here, and Victober will always be my favorite readathon every year. So.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here. And I'm always like extra impressed by bilingual Victober participants. They're like, Victorian literature is intimidating enough to people who are native English speakers. So props.
Thank you.
And then last but not least is Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Brooks, and this is, I think I did the math. I think this is my 6th Victober participating, but my 5th on YouTube.
Wow. Oh, so cool. And I feel like you always find kind of unconventional Victober picks. Like now I really want to read Barney the Vampire.
Oh yeah, me
Yes,
too.
you
Even
should.
though it's very long.
So thank you everyone who's in the chat and leaving the lovely comments. It's so fun to see people from all over the world that are here participating, and people also who have returned, and then some that it's their first Victober, which is just so cool. So here's somebody says that they're starting with The Way We Live Now.
Of course.
I'll definitely be working on that some today. I'm finding that it's going to be a Trollope that I think might take me a little bit of work to get into, which I seem to be an outlier for that, but I am very much certain that I will fall in love with it. So I think that's something that I will work on today. And then also I took this slipcover off. It's very boring to hold up, but Miss Miles by Mary Taylor, which she was a friend of Charlotte Bronte, and feels very, very Yorkshire. The jury is still out on whether I will fall in love with this. I'm finding myself like, I can do it. I can persevere through another chapter. The writing is beautiful, and there's plenty of quotes that I have underlined, but I haven't quite fallen in love with it. But I'm still I'm only 100 out of 450 pages, so there's still plenty of pages and time for me to fall in love with it. So yeah, my plan also was during Victober to work on my knitting a lot. So I'll be doing the audiobook of The Way We Live Now, and then I'm working on blankets for.
Oh wow!
So this is Arthur's.
Gorgeous.
I keep trying to hide it from him, so I can't like knit it around them. So yes, hopefully I will get through that.
Double productive for you, Kate. Read and knit.
Sometimes you just can't choose,
And it makes you very much a kind of Victorian lady, Kate, Yes.
Although I was thinking, like, would that have been very spendy having the dyed yarn? Like, I'm thinking if you're more working class, would you have undyed yarn? I don't know.
But I think the Victorian period, like that was when like artificial dye, synthetic dyes really kind of exploded. And so our idea that everyone was a bit drab in Victorian times isn't really true. They actually had some quite bright colours, and they were more affordable than they'd ever been before.
That's very true. Yes. Okay. Good point. All right. Yeah. So I feel very much like a Victorian lady. Yeah, that's something. I think a couple of years ago, I did a couple of Victober bingos, and one of them was someone is doing handicraft, because it's just mentioned in all of the things, which is very fun. And then I did read this morning a few of Charlotte Mary Young's letters, and she's constantly telling her cousin about the handicraft projects that she's working on, which is really fun. So I guess, Katie, what are you going to be working on today as we read?
So I finished off one book already today in Victober. I started off with a very thin book to make myself feel accomplished, which is what I always do in readathons. So I read My Flirtations by Ella Hepworth Dixon, which is like about 200 pages, only took me like 2 hours to read. Several like vignettes about this young woman and all the different men she's flirted with at parties and stuff, which is very, very fun, from the 1890s. It was very entertaining. It was making me laugh out loud, so that was really, really good. I finished that, and I was trying to decide what to read next, and I think I'm probably going to read, which side is this one? Probably going to pick up A Burglary by Amy Dillwyn, because I really like Amy Dillwyn, and this is like mid-length, so I feel like I'll work my way up to a really long one. Maybe I'll start A Burglary today. That's what I think I'm probably going to read today.
Excellent. I hope you enjoy A Burglary. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, you're doing, I think it's called the snowball effect, where you like work on the smaller things first, and you build momentum. So perfect. Just let me catch up on the chat here. So someone says they're cheating and they're reading a 1904 by Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad is an author that I need to read more. I want to read Lord Jim. I've read The Heart of Darkness, but I think that actually is later than 1901.
I can't remember. That's the only thing by Joseph Conrad that I've read, but I read that like 10 years ago. I don't remember it very well.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, and Christy is one of the buddy readers for the what is the Charlotte Mary Young that we're reading, The Pillars of the House. It's the 1,000-page family saga. But we did the first 500 pages in September, and now we're.
Let me join. I have to go.
Marissa's here. Hi, Marissa.
Hi. I actually have to go board right now. I'm coming back home for my brother's wedding, but I'm excited to kick Victober off with reading more of The Last Chronicle of Barset, hoping to finish it on the plane.
Oh, I hope you have us.
So yeah.
And
so me and my little travel buddies are ready to go.
Oh, safe travels.
Thank you guys, and have a good Victober. I'm sure I'll talk to you guys all soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yes, so we're reading The Pillars of the House, and so Christy is making progress in that. More people reading The Way We Live Now. The Invisible Man, Phantom of the Opera, North and South, The Woman in White, and still considering the group read. So there's, you can jump in whenever.
Lots of options.
Yes.
The Heart of Darkness was 1899, Kate.
Oh, thank you. Okay. That can count towards my
is-
tally then.
Yeah.
I guess I get mixed up about the date. I won't be reading any Victorian literature because I just finished all my exams, so I don't have any brain capacity. Oh, bless you. Oh my goodness.
Hey, but there's brainless Victorian literature. I'm sure we could come up with something. Katie, I'm sure you could suggest a suitably brainless thing.
I feel like there's definitely lots of easier Victorian reads. Lots of plays are quite quick to read. Actually, My Flirtations was not brainless, but like that was a pretty easy, funny read. Some of the humorous ones, like 3 Men in a Boat or Diary of a Nobody, they're all quite like light and easy, aren't they?
Yes.
You know, you don't have to read The Way We Live Now, 1,000 pages of deep discussion of money and class.
Or what was it? The Story of the Treasure Seekers by E. Nesbit. That is very lighthearted and approachable. My second Victober for Angela, dipped my toes in with 3 books last year, all in this year. And it's also fun, and it speaks well to The Way We Live Now. There are plenty of people rereading it. Someone starting off with Agnes Grey. I feel like that is a lovely one to start off with.
Definitely.
And then somebody's rereading Dombey and Son. I'm really hoping that happens for me too.
I've just finished rereading that, and it's just always so wonderful.
I'm surprised the BBC hasn't made a more recent miniseries of it.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think it was one in the 80s, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
very expensive period dramas. They haven't done very many since the recession in 2008. A lot less since then.
That's true. Yeah, because you have to hide any show of modernity. No power lines, no nothing.
Yeah. I think that's why in the 90s and the early 2000s there were so many miniseries, and then they've really dropped away.
Yes. So Melissa is reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles, enjoying it so far, though the sense of doom is upon me already.
Oof.
And then Donna at the Studio in the Library. Happy Victober, everyone. I'm sticking to what I have on my shelf. That's always cool to kind of utilize what you have. The Water Babies. Still haven't read that. Have any of you read it?
Yeah. I have, but I was about 12. I remember nothing.
I did reread it like a few years ago, and like the sort of awfulness of the social commentary is a lot stronger reading it as an adult, but also it is a bit kind of like pious, moralizing, like Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done By is very sort of, but it is worth it. Yeah, it's good.
It's very much there to teach Victorian children a lesson, right?
Good.
Okay. So Melanie commenting, just finished The Way We Live Now by Trollope and Man and Wife by Wilkie Collins. Wow.
Finished already. Wow.
I hit the ground running.
It's only the 1st of October.
You would think it is a typo.
Maybe she meant that she's starting Man and Wife. So Man and Wife is the group read on my Patreon. And I am like, all right, I suggested The Way We Live Now for the Victober group read, and I nominated Man and Wife. So I did this to myself, but hopefully I'm able to go through.
I started the 15th of September, y'all.
That
I just gave in and started.
Yeah, I'm listening to Man and Wife as well, and I also started that a few days ago. When I finished Dombey and Son, I was like, well, I'm not going to finish anything else in audiobook before Victober, so I'll just start Man and Wife, which I'm really enjoying. I'm like, a quarter of the way through or something.
Oh, Katie, I'm so excited because I know you and I both have a hit or miss relationship with Wilkie Collins, and this was just a complete win. So I really hope it ends up being the same way for you.
So far, so good.
Excellent. And then I love, in terms of mood and atmosphere, on the opposite ends of the spectrum, the Belton Estate and Wuthering Heights. It's nice to have some balance between the tragedy and more lightheartedness. And Will Belton is now like on the like top list of like just leading. He's not really a leading man, but like noble men in Victorian literature. I loved him. Let's see. We have so many to get through. Petra here from, I see. I did a TBR talk on Patreon. Started The Way We Live Now on audiobook and really liking it so far. We'll be starting The Doctor's Wife, Man and Wife, and The Return of the Native today.
Wow.
Wow.
Go all in.
Yes. Okay, controversial. I feel like I'm the only person in the world who didn't like Miss Marjoribanks.
I didn't either, Kate. I DNF'd it.
I wanted to love it, and I've enjoyed other books by her. Charles Heathcote is here. He's sitting down with The Mystery of Mrs. Glencarroll all day, and I had yet to actually pick it up.
That's Charlie.
Well, it's very good. Well, that's why you're here at the reading sprint, Charlie.
Exactly. Well, yes, that's why you're here, Charlie. And you know, the journey of a book just starts with the first word. So just pick it up and it will be okay.
I think as well, Charlie, I think the addition you have is The Mystery of Mrs. Glencarrow, and then the second story in it, Queen Eleanor and Fair Rosamond. Queen Eleanor and Fair Rosamond is the better story. So you'll want to read. I mean, they're both really good, but Queen Eleanor and Fair Rosamond is especially good. So you have that to look forward to once you finish The Mystery of Mrs. Glencarrow as well.
Perfect. I want to make a big dent in Armadale today. Plus start Uncle Silas and read the old nurse's story.
Excellent choices.
I fell completely in love with Uncle Silas. I started Victober early too, and it just blew my mind. Tiffany is here. Happy 1st of October, starring Nicholas Nickleby and 3 Men in a Boat. Let's see here.
That's a nice contrasting pair, isn't it?
It is. It is. So this is interesting. Charlie says that someone started to write an adaptation to Dami and Son, but the BBC dropped it because they wanted to move away from bonnet dramas.
Oh.
That's very sad. Oh, how fun. Someone says I kicked off, Nada says I kicked off October with Jill, and I'm only a chapter in, but I'm 99% sure this is going to be a new favorite. I also started both The Way to Live Now and Man and Wife in September. So fun. Oh, and then several people have done, is it Read Dracula Every Day? I can't remember the name of it, but you get an email that is, you know, the date that is in the story, whatever date it is, you get an email of it on that day. So I guess, Milena, what are you going to be reading today during sprints?
I'm going to read Great Expectations because I already started only the first chapter on audiobook, but I'm gonna give Dickens another go. I think this is the book I need to do that with. So I do think I will love this.
I think it's great for autumn.
Yeah.
It's great all year round. Great Expectations.
Yes. And then, Katie, what will you be reading?
I think we've done. I'm going to read about a burglary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
You've done me already.
Sorry. I got like
by
all the comments. Okay, so then, Jennifer, did we talk about yours?
No, I'm also reading Dickens. I'm reading Barnaby Rudge.
Excellent. Lots of Dickens here. What I like to see.
Yes. And I love this so far. This is hit the ground running, so I'm excited.
And this is one that you had started it before, and then you just knew you needed a nice copy of it, and then you could sink your teeth into it.
Yes, so I could annotate and just have a lot of fun with my highlighters.
That's awesome. I love that. And then Roz, had we done yours?
No. So I've got 2 things I'm going to read. I'm going to read today's bits of The Way We Live Now, because I've been saving that for our sprint. But also, I'm just finishing off Mrs. Warren's Profession, which is the play that I'm reading this Victober, and it's kind of like Katie's challenge. And oh wow, it's quite something.
Yeah, right.
Shaw wrote a long preface for it, and so I'm actually reading the preface now because I read the play and thought, no, actually, I really want to read what he says about it. So that's me. But I finished The Romance of a Shop about an hour ago, so I'm all Victobered up already.
That's wonderful. Oh, wonderful. All right. So I think we'll say 35 minutes, and we'll read until whatever 25, whatever hour it is where you are. Although it gets confusing in Australia, I know it's a half hour, like it's whatever hour and a half, but it's the middle of the night there right now. So I don't think any of them will be joining us. So happy reading, everyone. that's the end of that sprint. So I had forgotten the one kind of obstacle with the audiobook of The Way We Live Now is Mark from Book Time with Elvis is here. Hi, Mark. I had forgotten there was going to be some American characters, and the American accents, which I know it's the exact same when Americans do British accents. It just sounds very jarring. And I think it finally occurred to me that's how we sound to British people, like like talking like Katharine Hepburn, like. It's also whenever I watch a Korean show and there's an American, I'm like, oh, it just sounds so unnatural compared to all the Korean accents. It's just a small thing. Still enjoying it.
Which audio version are you listening to, Kate?
So I know, yes, there are people have their camp that they're in. I like David Schoffer. So I know Timothy West is wonderful.
Yeah.
Is it?
I'm going to listen to Timothy West, I think.
There might be
me too. A mix of that and reading it. Yeah.
Yes. I think it's fun to double dip. And I'm sorry, there's feedback on someone's mic.
I thought it was me, but then when I muted, I heard it again. So.
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
Yeah, okay. I think it was Katie's. I'm sorry, Katie. Whenever you want to talk, just unmute yourself. Yeah, I think it's nice to have the different formats. So if you want to just compulsively read through something, you're reading through it physically, and then, I have to wash some dishes or I have to do some laundry, putting on the audiobook, which does feel very Victorian to have somebody reading to you.
I'm quite excited to listen to The Way We Live Now because I have read it 3 times before, but I've never listened to it before. So I'm really, really excited to listen to it. That'll be really good. Nice new experience. I haven't started yet, but I will. I've read it 3 times, so I can still keep up with the discussion on Goodreads on Discord. But yeah, I'm looking forward to listening.
How old were you when you read it for the first time?
15 maybe. So I read He Knew He Was Right and The Way We Live Now are my first anti-Trollope books. I don't remember which way round I read them, but I read them both when I was maybe like 14, 15. And then I wrote an essay on it when I was like 18. And then I reread it maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, and then I reread it now. But it's probably my favorite Trollope book. It's very
Oh, it's weird because I read it. It's one of the first Trollope. It was the first Trollope book that I read, and still when I was very new to Victorian literature, and I really don't remember much of it. It's but like my aunt loves classics, and so she asked me to read it with her, and I did. But I'm just realizing I don't remember anything, so it feels like reading it for the first time again.
Funnily enough, it was the first Trollope that I read as well.
Really?
And it's a kind of, an odd one to choose as you way in because it's chunky, isn't it? But
it is.
It converted me. And I read loads of Victorian literature in my teens, like Katie, but Trollope, for some reason, I didn't touch. And I read this, I must have been in my 40s when I read it, my first ever Trollope. And wow. I've been reading him ever since, but it was like, wow, how did I miss this amazing writer?
Yes.
I think Trollope is really underrated, actually. Like at uni, I had a Victorian literature course. No Anthony Trollope, like at all. When I studied, I did an essay on one Anthony Trollope book, on The Way We Live Now when I was at school, but that was like a free choice, write about whatever books you want. So I wrote about The Way We Live Now and I'll Meet Your Friend, and that was great fun. But like I'd never been taught Anthony Trollope in a school or university setting at all. A lot of his books are out of print, and I just think they're so good. And I think also like some of them are like really accessible. Like I think he's a bit less weird than Dickens. Love Dickens as I do. Like Anthony Trollope is a bit more like realistic, psychologically complex characters. Like there's just there's a lot to love about Anthony Trollope, and I feel like he's not as loved as he should be, maybe. Although I feel like BookTube is pretty much firmly a fan of Anthony Trollope. Definitely a lot of us who really like Anthony Trollope on BookTube.
Yeah, he's become a BookTube darling in the community that likes Victorian literature, which is so fun. And it's always, anytime I talk about him in a video, I'll get a recommendation of one that I hadn't read yet. So the list continues to grow.
If you write 47 books,
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, he wrote a lot, right?
47 novels Anthony Trollope wrote.
Wow.
I'm trying to read them all. I think I'm on like 29 now.
Hey, that's well over halfway.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that's why he's not taken so seriously, because he wrote a lot? Because there's this sort of idea that people who write a lot, they must be churning them out. And somehow, you know what I mean? Like if George Eliot had written 47 books, would she be revered the way she is?
It's true. It's like authors like Mary Elizabeth Braddon and Margaret Oliphant, like also wrote, like nearly 100 books each, and also not like thought of very highly, and not studied very much. And maybe that's because Anthony Trollope, wrote a lot of books. But they're really good. I don't know. I wonder if also if you write that many books, then like it's harder for like one to become really famous. Like, if you're Dickens and you wrote 14, then there's like a few which everyone's heard of, even though there are some that people haven't heard of. Whereas with Anthony Trollope, maybe he wrote so many books that like people's favorite book by him was really like spread very thin. I don't know. And then like the Barsetshire Chronicles are probably his most famous, but that's a series of 6. So maybe people don't want to read it. And maybe that kind of, means he's just a bit less well known. I don't know.
Yeah. So you're better off being Emily Bronte.
One masterpiece, and
exactly. And maybe for people studying it, like if you want to become an expert on Emily Bronte, you've got one novel, Juvenilia, and poetry. Whereas if you want to become an expert on Trollope, you've got 47 to read before you start.
That's very true. And that's interesting to think about Gaskell and Eliot, because their novels feel each pretty distinct. So I feel like if you wanted to specialize, you could kind of specialize on one of the novels as your focus. It seems more challenging because their books are just so diverse. Nada says Timothy West as a narrator is great, but his American accent isn't that much better. I feel like Hugh Laurie is the actor that I've been the most like, yes, sounds like dead on.
Yeah.
Apparently, in Hugh Laurie's audition for House, he didn't tell the casting directors that he was British, because they told his agent that they thought only an American could do it, and he was like, "Well, I'll just pretend; they'll never know."
All right.
That's
That's amazing.
I think one of the problems that like we have with American accents, getting them right, is because actually American accents are so varied. America's such a big place, and there's so many different. So people end up with a bit of a mishmash.
Yes. Although I feel like there's a fair amount of variation with British accents as well.
It's true. It's like if you see ever films where people who aren't British are trying to do British accents, like actually it's not that hard to get like a relatively RP accent, okay? Though sometimes people go way too far and no one ever speaks that posh. But like if I ever hear someone American trying to do a Yorkshire accent, like no, it's never.
Yes.
I mean, imagine trying to learn yourself how to speak English, and so many accents to choose from.
Yes, that is so true. I love this story that Anna Kendrick, the actress, told, where she was in England and she got to a hotel and somebody came, and it was, okay, I'll just tell you in advance. It's the people from Gogglebox, which is a show that I haven't seen. But they came up to her and they said, "Can I take your luggage for you?" And she thought they were doing a bit. So then she was like, "Oh yes, thank you very much." Like she thought they were doing a joke together, and then they kept talking, and she realized that was really their voice. So she's like, so I had to like slowly ease out of the bit that I was doing because I didn't want them to think I was making fun of them. Oh,
Great.
yeah, and then Alexi reads that she managed to read about 43 pages of Dombey and Son, and she says it's worse when it's a Southern accent. And within Southern accents, because I grew up in the Southern U.S., there's a ton of variety within those that they sound very distinct.
I'm very forgiven. I think when British people do Southern accents, they do them really well.
Oh.
But I read an article years ago, and I don't know how true this is, that dialect in the Eastern United States has stayed very similar to certain English accents because of the colonial period. And here in the South, we're just speaking a British accent very, very slowly. So they have an easier time. Y'all have an easier time doing the Southern accent.
That's funny.
Interesting.
Oh, I like this. A bowl of loaded baked potato soup for lunch, and read the first chapter of The Way We Live Now.
Oh, and I hope you enjoyed it, Kat. I just read the first chapter of The Way We've Let, and I just like each time I come back to Trollope, I'm just like, oh, this is so brilliant and so funny and so psychologically true to life.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I know a couple Felixes, unfortunately. It's just like, don't you want to, aren't you bored? Don't you want to just do something with yourself? That's why when my husband, sometimes he'll watch different adaptations with me, and he's definitely very impressed with the Gaskell men, because they're active, they do things, and yeah, they're kind of world changers. And I love like Roger Hamley's modeled after Charles Darwin, which I love that. I do love this. Timothy West got you through a power cut a few weeks ago. That is fabulous. I've read the first few pages of The Doctor's Wife, and I've already laughed out loud twice. I forget how snappy and witty Mary Elizabeth Braddon is. Oh, I just love, like, she clearly was very good at writing sensation novels, but she also is fine kind of poking fun at them affectionately.
I need to read The Doctor's Wife. I've only read Lady Audley's Secret and Aurora Floyd. And Aurora Floyd and Lady Audley's Secret have, like, I think they're a bit too similar almost. Like, I feel like that was a bad two to read as your first two. So I think I should read The Doctor's Wife. I always hear very good things about that one.
It really is so fun. And it's nice because it feels completely different.
Maybe that's next Victober.
Yes.
Could be next Victober for me too. Each Victober, I end up with this ever-lengthening list of things that I need to read next Victober.
I mean, my Victober TBR for this year is already like 30 books, which is, I will read a third of that. So, you know, I think I've already got like the TBR for the next 2 Victobers within this Victober. So.
What's funny is I had mine pretty set and I filmed my TBR. And then after that, after watching all your TBRs and then just seeing all the chat on Discord, I'm like, oh, here's this one. And I added like 40 books that I want to read. And now in reading Charlotte Mary Young's letters, she's talking about books that she read that are written by authors that were part of the Oxford movement, which is such a like small particular area of interest for me. So when I Google it, nothing really pops up. So now this is fun to, yes, you need to try all the things. Oh, that sounds like a nice break after grading. 3 chapters into Ruth. That is the Gaskell that I need to reread. It needs to happen.
You can enjoy it, Heather. That's such a good one. I mean, all Gaskell is really good, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Somebody earlier, I forget the comment, but they said they listened to Joanne Froggatt's narration of Wuthering Heights. I loved her narration. That's actually the only audiobook I've listened to of it. I've only listened to the audiobook once.
Where I'm staying in this holiday cottage, we're about 20 or so miles away from Bronte Country, Haworth. Yeah.
Oh. Have you been to Haworth before?
Yeah. Obviously. with I went, Tilly, my daughter, is a big reader too, Tilly Shelf, and she and I went when she was about 13, and just discovered the Brontes, and it was a lovely trip, but been back since, but that was quite special. She was all starstruck,
I can imagine. I would be starstruck. I'd still be starstruck.
I remember going around Haworth, like I must have been like 10, so like before I had read any books by the Brontes, before I knew anything about the Brontes. I have been back since, but it's quite weird that I remember very distinctly like going around this house and like looking at all the things and being really interested, but like not really knowing who they were, which is strange to think.
Well, maybe it kind of seeped into your brain, Katie, and that that's what.
But I remember because they had this room at the end where they have all like the maps that the Bronte siblings like drew when they were kids. And me and my brother used to draw maps of like, made up worlds when we were kids as well. So we got really excited about that. I remember that quite distinctly. But yeah, and then just obviously discovered the Brontes a few years later. Quite fun to look back on.
Oh wow. Manor Classic says I've read almost 30 pages of Esther Waters, and I'm up to page 84 now. It's really good so far. So Esther Waters is one of the books that I was thinking of for the new woman prompt. Another one beat it out, but it's definitely then post Victober reading agenda. Katie, I feel like you are the one to answer this. Is The Way We Live Now a good first Trollope to start with?
I think it's a good first Trollope if you're not too anxious about the fact it's 1,000 pages. Like it is actually a really good Trollope to start with in that it's really good. Like it genuinely is just one of his best books. Got a lot of great characters, a lot of really interesting subplots and plots, a lot of really interesting themes, pretty accessible. It's not one of his ones that is most like political, because some of his are very heavy on the politics, which if you're not interested in political history or if you're not in the UK and don't understand the British political system, now, let alone 150 years ago, can be really confusing. But The Way We Live Now is not too heavy on the parliamentary stuff as well. So I think it's a pretty good place to start with his books, as long as you don't mind a 1,000-page book. But it doesn't feel 1,000 pages. I always forget it's as long as like Dickens's books, because actually I feel like, I don't know, I feel like The Way We Live Now just doesn't feel that long.
I think if you're enjoying it, it doesn't feel that long.
Yeah, it kind of reads fast, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, Tiffany says she grew up reading Victorian literature, but she hadn't heard of Trollope until she found me on BookTube. And I definitely started reading Trollope more because of Katie. So it spreads. I love that about BookTube.
I definitely hear about so many like obscure Victorian books through Kate and so many other people on BookTube. Like I feel like I find out so many Victorian books through BookTube.
I heard of Trollope for the first time when I read a historical fiction about Dickens, and then he was a character in that book. I was like, that sounds so familiar. And then of course one of you had talked about it in a video.
What was the historical fiction?
I think it's by Samantha Silva. Let's see, I need to search my shelf. I think it's Mr. Dickens and His Carol. It's about the winter when he wrote A Christmas Carol. And I think she mentions Trollope in that book. I think that is the one.
Wow.
He's not a nice character though. He's very obnoxious.
See, I'm surprised. I would think they would portray Thackeray that way, because wasn't Thackeray kind of like had a rivalry with Dickens?
Oh, maybe it's possible that it's both of them. There are multiple authors in the book.
In The Warden, there's like a bit where Anthony Trollope is definitely like poking fun at Dickens. Like he talks about the newspapers, like he talks about Mr. Popular Sentiment, which is his like parody of Dickens. And he's definitely like having a joke about Dickens being a bit over sentimental and not realistic about how people actually behave. But I think it's done with love. Like I definitely read it as like fond teasing. Maybe they didn't like each other, I don't know. But like it definitely reads more as like, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say it reads necessarily as like it's not rude, but more just like we have very different styles of writing and approaching the world.
That's so funny. So, go ahead.
It's kind of funny thinking about that, that they all read each other, knew each other, or, because we see them all kind of separately when we read them and forget that.
Yes. Well, and without giving any spoilers, that Charlotte Bronte dedicated Jane Eyre to Thackeray, and because of certain details of his life, he thought she was making fun of him. Yeah, very uncomfortable and awkward. But then he met her, and he was like, okay, I understand. You walked into that honestly.
There are so many interesting things, like Gaskell and Charlotte Bronte were friends, and Wilkie Collins and Dickens are really close friends, and like Dickens read lots of Gaskell's books and like gave her editorial feedback and stuff. There's a letter Dickens wrote to George Eliot where he was like, I think you're a woman. I've read your book and I think you're probably a woman, even though you're anonymous, which is really interesting. Like, and lots of stuff like that. Just like like engaging with each other and part of a community, which is kind of cool.
Yes. I need to read that letter.
I just read Aurora Lee by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Kate and I have been kind of reading it together, and I just finished it. And then I was reading the introduction, because you always have to save that for the end, don't you, to be careful. And people said to her, "Oh, it's a bit like Jane Eyre. What the plot is just a bit similar." And she was really kind of like offended. This was completely different,
But it is.
I know.
And I mean, it's not that it's bad to be compared to Jane Eyre, but I just also think it just feels very different and distinct to me. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, well, we mustn't do spoilers, but just because one particular thing happens to the male protagonist doesn't make it the same book.
Yes. Okay, wow, this really tops Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Edgar Wallace wrote 170 novels, or dictated them. That is a lot.
Yeah. You have a suspicion that 170 can't all be good.
Oh, now this is, if I am not knitting or doing something, my mind does wander with audiobooks. So I like, or going on a walk, just something. It helps me. Oh, Nicholas Bolton. He's narrated, what have I heard? I really like his David Copperfield, actually. But I haven't heard any Americans. I don't think there are any Americans in David Copperfield, so I haven't heard his American. Okay, yay. Karen is convinced to attempt The Way We Live Now.
Well done, Karen. You can complain later. No, you're going to thank us.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and then Kat says she's hooked just with the first chapter.
Ooh.
That's awesome. Oh, this is so fun. So Jess loves mysteries. And so now she's reading her first Arthur Conan Doyle. I don't know why it took me so long to read Arthur Conan Doyle. That's so great.
I don't know if you've seen the new book by Zadie Smith called Fraud, but it's Victorian historical fiction. And she features in it as a kind of a character, the writer William Harrison Ainsworth, who was a Victorian novelist, and he wrote, like, I don't know, not as many as Wallace, I don't think, but huge numbers of books. But apparently they genuinely are absolutely dreadful. I'm sort of tempting to have a go and see.
Some of them, yeah, it's like, yeah, they became forgotten for a reason. Yeah, there was what did I write down? Harry Collingwood. Have you heard of him? Okay, he was a civil engineer, and that civil engineer by day, and by night he wrote kind of adventure stories. So I'm trying out The Secret of the Sands. I don't know if it will happen during Victober, but he has many adventure stories, and I want more like Treasure Island and Moonfleet. So I don't know if they will fit the bill, but that's what I'm hoping. Oh, this is there. Some people are chatting about North and South versus Wives and Daughters. So out of the hosts, which one do you prefer? Obviously, mine is Wives and Daughters, even though I do love North and South.
I think my rogue opinion is that I love North and South more, but I think Wives and Daughters is probably better. I love them both so much, but I like North and South is my favorite because it was my first Gaskell and I fell in love with Gaskell through that. But if I think about it, I'm like some of the characters in Wives and Daughters are just like absolutely amazing characters. Yeah, a few people were talking in the chat about the lack of ending of Wives and Daughters, but she did die like when she had like a couple of chapters left to write, which is very sad that we don't have those last few chapters. But it's so good. They're both
Milena, have you read both of them?
I have, yes. I read Wives and Daughters in November last year because I couldn't cram it into October. But I think I prefer Wives and Daughters because I do also think it's better. But I also just connected with the characters on such a wonderful level with that one. And the ending, I just used my imagination. So it was a perfect ending for me.
Nice. Well, that means you have a strong imagination.
Yes.
What about you, Jennifer?
I still haven't read Wives and Daughters, and it haunts me. Every year I put it on my yearly TBR. I say, this will be the year. And then I just don't get to it.
Maybe next year I'll convince you to do a buddy read.
Yes, force me to it, Kate.
Okay. I gladly. And then Roz, what about you?
Well, I read both of them when I was in my teens. When I was kind of like Gaskell obsessed. I loved Gaskell. I thought I was the first person to realize that Gaskell was, as good as the Brontes or whatever. But I've reread North and South and Mary Barton sort of recently, but I haven't reread Wives and Daughters. So maybe I'll join you in your buddy read, and that would be to make me reread it.
I love this plan so much. Now, Roz knows very well, though, I am not always the best buddy reader. Roz, I have finished Aurora Lee. I finished it last month. And then I keep getting intimidated about leaving a message because Roz is a great person to kind of decipher poetry with. And I never decipher as well as she does. And so I think like, I don't know what I have to offer. I was just going to send a message saying, I loved it. I just loved it so much. I did what I could do is I did highlight some things and I think I have some thoughts based on that. But Katie, it was interesting because I know we both love Victorian literature, but our tastes kind of diverge sometimes. And so I was thinking, oh, Katie isn't sure how she feels about the ending. How will I think? And I'm a sucker and I completely love the ending.
I think I might be with Katie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I did still love Aurora Lee. Like, it was so interesting. And it's probably one of those ones where when I finished it, I was like, oh, I'm slightly annoyed. But then, like, I've thought about it so much since, and so many interesting ideas, and like, it's such an interesting, it's so interesting, Aurora Lee. It's really, really good.
It is just packed with so much that she threw into it. And I'm just in awe of these authors that were really unwell and wrote these amazing masterpieces. And George Eliot just had months on end where she would feel really ill and then she would just burst through and kind of write some genius. It's amazing. This is very exciting, but I don't know if I'm brave enough to watch it actually.
I didn't know this. This is very exciting. I love Uncle Silas. That'd be a wonderful film.
It would.
This is very, very exciting. I'm gonna have to look this up now.
Now, I have to say that I think the kind of thrilling nature of the ending of Uncle Silas, I feel like the ending of Man and Wife is every bit as thrilling. Not better, but just like if you enjoyed kind of that, it really...
I'm ordering it, Kate.
Oh, Wait, which one are you ordering?
I'm gonna order Man and Wife.
Oh, because I remember you
loved
read
Uncle Silas.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jennifer,
loved.
and your guy Wilkie. Like,
Yeah, that's my man.
Yes, it's meant to be. Oh, this is interesting. Melanie's suggesting that a good first Trollope might be "Can You Forgive Her" or Dr. Wardle's School. Dr. Wardle's School, it's like a very kind of rather low key Trollope, but it got me out of a reading slump, so I'm forever grateful to it for that. Can You Forgive Her was so hard for me to get into, and once I did, though, I could not stop reading. Oh, so good.
No, Brian. Uncle Silas and Silas Marner are not the same book.
Very different books, I think.
I want to give Silas Marner another try. I don't think I gave it a fair shot the first time, so I'm going to come back to it.
So Uncle Silas.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm getting ahead of the comments. Uncle Silas is by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, and Silas Marner is by George Eliot. And Uncle Silas is like gothic, slightly horror, sensation novel, and Silas Marner is definitely not. But I read it, I don't remember it at all, to be honest.
I think Silas Marner feels pretty whimsical.
Silas Marner is a lovely, lovely book. It's like
I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Milena. We're going to stick up for Silas Marner, and
anything George Eliot wrote.
Yeah,
just.
So then Charlie says, "Isn't Trollope mocking Dickens' Christmas books with Harry Heathcote of Gangoil, setting a Christmas novel in Australia with fires occurring everywhere?" Oh my goodness,
that is not a good Trollope to start with. That is not one of his best. It's very short, but it's not one of his best. It's quite a weird Christmas story in Australia. I don't know. Very strange.
So great.
Did he go to Australia?
I don't think so. I don't know. Not to my knowledge.
No, because like America, some of like Dickens went to America or whatever.
I don't know. I think maybe one of I have a very vague recollection that maybe one of Anthony Trollope's sons went to Australia or something like that. So maybe he did have like a connection. But it's a slightly odd. It's not a very exciting book.
Yeah,
sounds really weird.
I wouldn't recommend Harry Heathcote of Gangoil.
Oh, someone is leaving a comment about Australia. Can you see it, Kate? Elizabeth.
There's so much to like scroll through. We're getting such good comments. Let's see.
I will read it out otherwise.
Thank you. Yes.
It says Trollope's son lived in Australia, so he visited him there.
Thank you. Wow. Because that was a long, slow journey then.
Yeah.
A lot of weeks, wouldn't it? A lot of weeks.
Okay, then Mark at Book Time with Elvis. I just scrolled past this one, and now I want to pick his brain about Harry Collingwood. So Mark, tell me, Harry Collingwood, is he forgotten for a reason, or are his books like, are they decent? Am I not getting my hopes up for no reason? Oh, see, I don't know if I have the heart to watch this. There's a Stephen Fry and Emma Thompson spoof about Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning. Although, if it's just about the relationship, I thought it was about her being like just ill in bed, but it seems about the relationship.
It is very funny.
Really?
It is very
Okay.
funny. Yeah.
Okay.
They obviously both have read lots of Browning and Barrett Browning, so it's very affectionate.
Yes. Oh, okay. Then also Mark he says for adventure. I need to write these down. In addition to Collingwood, you could try W.H.G. Kingston, Rider Haggard, G.A. Henty, R.M. Ballantyne, and maybe Frederick Marryat, but he wasn't an anti-abolitionist. That's so interesting. So it depends on kind of how like blatant it is in his books, whether it will hinder if it's just like he's writing anti-abolitionist books, I don't really think I could.
Was it Marryat that wrote The Children of the New Forest?
Yes.
That's him, yeah.
So I loved that as a child, but I mean, like, I guess you get from that he's politically conservative, because he's on the kind of cavalier side, but you wouldn't know that he was anti-abolitionist from that.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm writing these down. I feel like G.A. Henty, I've had a couple friends that have enjoyed his.
I think, well, Mark will tell us maybe, but I think they're kind of like boys' books. Henty.
Yes. Which my dad periodically will read to my oldest on the phone, and has lots of books that he wants to, check off. But I told him, I was like, can I claim reading Treasure Island aloud? And I felt like I had to ask his permission because it's my dad's favorite book of all time. He loves it. But he's like, yes, you can claim that one. Okay, so Mark says, I enjoyed the Collingwood I read, but he can be extremely technical. Oh, with the nautical stuff, which can drag a bit. Okay. Maybe skim reading the nautical stuff. If the characters are interesting enough, they could pull me through. Am I right in thinking Aurora Lee is poetry or in verse?
Yes.
So, or I guess they're asking, is it poetry or in verse, meaning like, does it rhyme or is it, so it's in verse, is that what we're saying? But it's also, yeah.
Yeah, it's poetry. Okay. It's a novel length poem, or yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But it doesn't make it difficult to read.
No, and especially Roz and I have read through The Ring and the Book, which is Robert Browning's, and that is so challenging. So this felt like a walk in the park in comparison. It definitely takes it wants your full attention, but I felt like I could actually understand it.
Aurora Lee is definitely a lot more accessible, than The Ring and the Book. I feel like Aurora Lee, it is a very long poem, but you could also just read it as a novel. Like you wouldn't, if you're not someone who's very familiar with poetry, if you just read it and kind of forget about the line breaks, you'll still get a lot out of it, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. Yeah. And it's just so beautiful. She's so good at putting words together in such a beautiful way. So this, I was glad somebody gave me a heads up about this because I bought his autobiography, was it last year maybe? And so now I have like the list of Trollope that I want to read before, the ones that he addresses in his autobiography before I read the autobiography. Oh, okay, yeah. So Mark says Marriott did use his adventure books for voice to support his view on slavery. Wow, that's so like. Wow. But I mean, slavery was everywhere. So it makes sense that somebody could be societally acceptable and put out those books.
When he was writing, I feel like that was
really. Okay.
I think that was bad news for his time as well.
I'm thinking about America. So never mind, scratch that. Rider Haggard is on my TBR for this month, and I know of the modern criticisms of his prose. Yes, boys' books, seemingly how they are described and were conceived. So Brian has all the big questions. What is the greatest debut novel of all time? Wuthering Heights, Pickwick Papers, of course. Desperate Remedies. Oh, I'm sorry. I think this is an easy answer with Wuthering Heights, Brian.
Very easy.
Just Wuthering Heights.
Just Wuthering Heights. Even Katie would say Wuthering Heights. I have to say, I came out of Desperate Remedies, and it was just so weird. Like, I don't have any other intelligent kind of observation. It was just bizarre.
Yeah. I really love Desperate Remedies, but it's quite a wild Hardy. It's definitely like Hardy Wilkie Collins mashup, which I love. But,
yes. Yeah, I'm glad I finally have recovered, and I'm like really enjoying a reread of The Woodlanders. I'm recovering after my book that I don't like, and so I'm glad that I can now enjoy his writing again. So is it 2 years ago now? I interviewed Dominic from the Trollope Society, and I forgot this. He recommended Barchester as a first good starting point. Marriott wrote Mr. Midshipman Easy, which was a very Napoleonic naval story, which inspired C.S. Forester. Oh, and Patrick O'Brien. That makes complete sense.
And you know what? Now you say that, I did read that as a child.
Oh, wow.
Gosh, yes. And then I really got into Patrick O'Brien.
Oh, how fun.
Wow, I'd forgotten that. Thank you.
Something I didn't know until I read Michael Taylor's wonderful book, The Interest, which is nonfiction about the fight to end slavery. Highly recommended. Wow. So another nonfiction, and then like nautical, it's making me think of, is The Lighthouse Stevensons. Have any of you heard of this? It's by Bella, someone. I'll have to look it up. And it's all about the family of Stevensons that Robert Louis was a part of. Or Robert Louis, if you're British. And the amazing construction of lighthouses around the coast of Scotland that they did with just seemingly insurmountable obstacles. And I am not a topical nonfiction kind of reader. Typically, I'm more memoirs, but I could not stop reading it. Bella Bathurst. That was fascinating. Oh, a collection of plays by... All right, Jennifer, do you know how to read Italian?
I do, but is this French? Dion Bostisol? I have no idea.
This just shows how not at all bilingual I am.
I've probably offended a whole nation.
I know.
Irish. No,
I haven't
Irish.
read or seen anything by him, but someone in the comments was just saying that London Assurance is by him, and I have heard of London.
Okay.
London Assurance was on, in London. In my head, it was recently. It was probably quite a long time ago. So that is still like in popular. So that's the one that has like remained known, I suppose.
Wow. Then Nada says, I'd insert Wuthering Heights too. What's the greatest anything?
Yes.
So I don't know if you've seen the completed collaborative video, but I love Nada. Like, her love for Wuthering Heights is so strong that she couldn't help but include it in her clip. And that made me so happy.
I'm going to be the odd one out here and say I do find Wuthering Heights makes me more uneasy than joyful.
Yeah, I feel like Wuthering Heights is one of those books where I'm like, I love it. I completely understand why people don't like it.
100%.
Whereas like when someone doesn't like Pride and Prejudice, I'm like, why? I don't understand why. Whereas if someone doesn't like Wuthering Heights, I'm like, that's completely understandable.
I see that. It's
totally
like
weird.
if you're explaining it, you're like, well, it's about really unlikable people doing really terrible things to each other, and it's so good.
And it's in a really confusing narrative style, and you never see the main characters alone. Like, but it is great.
Yeah, it is amazing, but
Yes. Yeah. So then Brian says, my cousin recently read it, wasn't a fan. He doesn't enjoy terrible people doing terrible things to each other. And I just, sometimes I sit and I ponder, like, why do I love it? And because any other book with that kind of dynamic, I'm such a baby about, like, no, I can't take it. I don't know. Oh, and this is, thank you, Mark, for reminding me about this. Delphi Classics. They do these complete works volumes, and they include letters, essays, criticisms, and other cool extras. That is really cool. Okay, Heather, I completely agree with this. Wuthering Heights, like The Great Gatsby, is one of those books people think is meant to be romantic because it has a romance in it. But that's not their point. I can't stand The Great Gatsby. Really. Yes. I am much more prone to like British literature than American literature, because American feels to me that it's like setting out to be the great American novel. Whereas I feel like a lot of British literature is like, here's this great story I'm going to tell you. I don't know.
I think I feel that way about American literature written from about the 1960s onwards, but not earlier.
Although Toni Morrison is the exception, I just have to say.
Oh,
but she set out to write an amazing, important to her book. She didn't set out to write the great American novel, you know.
Oh,
yes.
no, not at all.
Yes.
But she did.
She did.
Yes. And no, see, another one that I understand cognitively that it's an amazing book, but I did not like it. And then I know there are readers out there that love it, and so I will not take any copies from you in the bookstore. Yeah, so Nada says, the characters being terrible is a plus to me in Wuthering Heights' case because I don't get anxious and stressed over their fate. I can just sit back and enjoy the drama and the sheer brilliance of it. Okay, one thing is, I feel that the ending of Wuthering Heights, there is this slight bit of hope that you feel like maybe in the future, the next generation will do better. Yeah. Oh, Brian says, anybody heard the Kate Bush song Wuthering Heights? This every first day of Victober now, my family and I, we listen to that song. What's funny is our boys are like, what is this? And we're like, shh, you can talk when it's good.
Mama needs to dance.
Oh, this is interesting. Jana Gatsby says, so even though I use Gatsby in my moniker, I like the idea of Gatsby, but the book itself is not my favorite. Yeah, the bright young things, kind of all the glitz and glamour is super fun. It's the Southern belle in me. That's my way of saying that I don't like it. Oh, yes. Yeah, I've only listened to Wuthering Heights and the Stranger Things one, the Running Up the Hill one. So I'm not well versed in Kate Bush. So please give your recommendations for more good Kate Bush songs.
Just like everything.
Just everything. Okay. Oh, Austin was a fan of Samuel Johnson. He wrote a piece that started, I was known to possess a fortune and to want a wife. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, Roz, I feel like this seems like something you may have trekked through. Is it the Diary of Samuel Johnson? Is that what it is? The diary? Or is it the Life of Samuel Johnson? Have you trekked through that?
No. Yeah, it's I'm sure I should have done, and I've read chunks of it. But actually, I like fiction. I like a novel. Give me a story, not a diary or yeah. Boswell writing about Johnson. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing that I'm kind of sad about is I'm learning that Victorian travel writing is not my cup of tea, and I want it to be. Like, I want to enjoy hearing about the Victorians traveling. Although I have enjoyed the bits of Letters from Egypt by the nurse Florence Nightingale. But the other ones that I've tried, it's just like a list of things that they saw, and I want you to write it in an interesting style. Well, this sounds fabulous. There's a video of me and my sons doing the Wuthering Heights dance on the moors behind the Bronte parsonage. That is absolutely fabulous.
Oh, we want a link, Amanda.
Oh, interesting. Kate Bush wrote a song called The Sensual World based on Molly Bloom's chapter in Ulysses. Have you read Ulysses? I'm not sure how to say it.
Yeah.
You have? Okay.
Anyone else?
At some point I will.
I've only read Dubliners, and I feel like I didn't like that very much, and that's like the most accessible James Joyce, and after that I was like, maybe I'll just take a step back. Maybe not for me.
I was shocked at the library. I had seen A World of the Brontes puzzle, and I was so excited to have it for Victober, but I got there, it had been checked out. But they also had there The World of Dickens. So that's the one I'm putting together. But they had The World of James Joyce. And I thought, I'm really surprised. This is kind of, there's demand for this, but I'm very happy for all the Joyce fans out there.
And, Joyce fans are obsessive. And also in Ireland, he's a god.
A lot of people in the UK study Dubliners or Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man at school as well. I didn't, but it's quite common to study Joyce at school over here. So in that sense, I guess a lot of people would have read some Joyce.
Yeah. They have whole days celebrating him, you know.
Oh, wow.
Bloomsday is a thing when people read the whole of Ulysses, like taking turns out loud. Yeah.
I know every New Year's Day of course I'm forgetting it, but the town where the Whaling Museum is in Massachusetts, where Moby Dick opens up, they'll read Moby Dick in a day. That would be, I would have a hard time doing that in a day.
Yes.
Oh, I love this. My favorite first line so far from Victorian Lit is from The Woman in White. This is a story of what a woman's patience can endure and what a man's resolution can achieve.
Nice one.
Yes. Some love for Boswell. Boswell's writing is great. So many conversations with interesting people. Boswell's travel diary is great, especially how he forces himself on Voltaire and Rousseau and then sleeps with his mistress. That sounds very spicy. Penny wants to read all the things. I have room in my life for all the lit, American and Victorian, Russian, etc., etc.
Wow, me too.
Yes. Although I have to pace myself with the Russian lit.
Yeah, I never end up loving it as much as the pages are. They're so big.
I loved Anna Karenina, felt worth it. Crime and
Yes.
Punishment did not feel worth it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's like I felt like I gripe about Hardy, and then you read Crime and Punishment, and you're like, "What was I saying?"
Try the Brothers Karamazov, and you'll forgive Hardy anything.
Well, and I love the meme that has, you know, the Americans, "I will die for freedom," and the French, "I will die for love," the Brits, "I will die for honor," and the Russians are, "I will die."
Yes.
Oh, so I feel like this is a good crowd to ask any nonfiction Victorian to recommend. Well, it's actually written in the Victorian era, and I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I just loved Maud, the Illustrated Diary of a Victorian Lady. It really pulls back the veil on thinking all the Victorians were like very buttoned up and serious all of the time, and so fun.
A couple of other things as well. The Adventures of Mary Seacole in Many Lands is really good. And she was a doctor in the Caribbean and in the Crimea and in the UK. That's really interesting. Also, a couple of essays as well, if you want some shorter nonfiction from the Victorian period. Oscar Wilde wrote a really interesting essay called The Soul of Man Under Socialism, which I haven't read for ages, but it's all about like socialism and basically it's Oscar Wilde being like, if technology could do lots of our jobs, we could have better lives if we did this, which is actually really like interesting to read today. And then Florence Nightingale wrote a really interesting essay called Cassandra, which is basically about like how awfully, terribly, and like appallingly boring it is being a middle-class woman in the Victorian period and having nothing to do, and like the sense of frustration in it is so clear, and that's well worth a read as well, and that's not too long, I don't think. Yeah, there's lots of interesting non-fiction pieces here and there from the Victorian period, I think.
I want to read. Harriet Martineau has an essay collection called Life. I think it's Life in the Sick Room. And so just purely based on my chronic illness, I was like, oh, I would love to hear kind of her thoughts and observations on it. Interestingly, though, I don't know what you think, Katie. I feel like her disability, chronic illness rep in Deerbrook isn't maybe the most nuanced.
No, it's not, is it really? There's definitely a lot of other Victorian writers doing that stuff better. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what that would be like in her book.
I've got a Victorian non-fiction thing that I'm kind of going to dip in and out of this Victober, and that's Mayhew's London. Well, this is like an abridged version of London Labour and the London Poor by Henry Mayhew. Oh. And he went around kind of interviewing lots of like working class and poor people in London, or writing about them, and it was a big, Dickens used it as a source. So because of the class theme that I sort of I'm thinking about this Victober, I thought I was really excited to pick up a secondhand copy of this. So And
It'd be good to know, Ron, if the abridged version is good, because I really want to read that, but also I think the actual full version is like 1,500 pages or something. Like it's really, really, really long. Because I've read extracts, but I'd quite like to read more of it, but I don't sort of know where to go with more of it without reading the whole thing, and I'm not sure I would read the whole thing cover to cover.
Yeah, and even this is a bit intimidatingly long, but it's just brilliant. You know, like you just dip in and like I opened it at random, okay, and this page is of the cigar end finders, okay, and this is people who try to make a living by collecting dropped bits of cigars.
Wow, that's appalling. That's
God.
how I can't imagine that. So this is not this is a documentary, but I still have a couple episodes left, but it's so sad. I haven't worked up the courage. Called Victorian Slum House. And I was like, is this going to glamorize it? And it does not. And it's all people who modern day people who volunteered, and they all did the jobs that their ancestors would have had. So like some of them are making paper flowers. And some of them are selling food on the street, and some are sewing. And it just shows how unbelievably hard it is. You're constantly just worrying about that day, having food to eat. There's no getting ahead. So that was really interesting.
In April, I read The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. That's about the women that were killed by the serial killer that we call Jack the Ripper, but it focuses on five women that were known to be killed by him rather than him. And it was just really interesting for detail about how easy it was to fall below a certain threshold and then just, your life just became impossible, and how people, and like women turn to sex work because what else can you sell at a certain point if you're a woman than your body? Yeah,
it's very good. Very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's terribly readable as well. If you want to get a flavour of what Victorian London was like, yeah, it's a good one.
You've convinced me. I'm gonna read it now. It's been on my list for a while, but I'm doing it.
And where was that? Coming back here. Yeah, so Tiffany says, Russian literature is the only literature that ranks as high as Victorian literature for me. Totally different vibe, but I adore them both.
Tolstoy is up there for me, I think.
Yeah, I have this great idea of doing the one chapter a day over the course of a year for War and Peace, because there's exactly 365 chapters. So maybe I'll make that happen this next year. We'll see. Okay, I will say Willa Cather has been an exception to the rule in general for me. I do enjoy her writing. Dickens on London, collection of Dickens essays by Hesperus Press is really good. It feels like Dickens is taking you on a personal tour of London. Something that I learned that I find so endearing is that Wilkie Collins lived in the same neighborhood as in his entire life. So less endearing that he had two families, but that's a story for another day. Oh, I think it is the Russian preoccupation with death that fascinates me too much. I've heard Victorians were also very interested in death as well, perhaps why I love Gaskell. Oh, I haven't seen this one, the 1900 House. Any of these kind of documentaries, like I am fully sold on watching.
I'm going to have to watch all of this back with a pen and paper and try to write down everybody's recommendations.
American Notes is so nauseating, and not just on the boat. I haven't read it. I haven't seen it. I read Frances Trollope has writings on her time in America. What the name of that was. But it's not quite Victorian. I think it's slightly before. Domestic Manners of the Americans. Yeah, 1832.
Oh.
That's when it came out. And it's very interesting to see how much more advanced Britain was with outlawing slavery, and then she visits America and it's just absolutely appalling. So that's definitely something that like glaringly stuck out to her, and kind of what is this? It is it's very sobering, to think about America, during the time of the founding fathers, like freedom, equality for everyone. Well, sort of. So yeah, just that was something that really struck her when she visited.
Kate, you mentioned Frances Trollope, but I'm thinking people may not all know who she is.
Yeah, so mother of Anthony Trollope, and Katie and I, we buddy read. Oh my goodness!
Oh, Widow Barnaby. Yeah. And I've read I've read one of her other books, Michael Armstrong, The Factory Boy, which was really good as well. I like her. Yeah, she's good. And it's quite fun that his mum also wrote novels, and he was obviously like inspired to write novels because his mum was a writer. Like, that's just quite fun, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I feel like Austen fans would really enjoy The Widow Barnaby, and it has a sequel. And also she has, is it The Vicar of Wrexhill? I think is also by her.
I think she wrote quite a lot. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So forgive me, but what time does Sweeney Todd reflect? And that, isn't it inspired by A String of Pearls, which was a Penny Dreadful?
Yes, I think it's like late Victorian. Yeah, I think the character Sweeney Todd first appeared in A String of Pearls, Penny Dreadful, or something later in the Victorian period, and then I guess the musical and so on is set earlier. So, the non-fiction book I mentioned is what's the line? No, the one I said is The Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands. So she was a doctoress, I think she called herself, or a nurse, as she is sometimes called historically. And she's really interesting. But I feel like maybe did someone else mention a book by a medical person? We were talking about Harriet Martineau's medical book as well. There we go. Kate's put it in the chat.
Well, before we close out, do any of you, as a way to kind of expand on Victober, do you like to watch something Victorian, set in the Victorian era? Or you just, you have enough books on your list?
I mean, I really want to rewatch Dickensian because it's just so lovely how in one street all Dickens's books come to life. And it has spoiled basically every novel for me, but I am fine with that because I watch so many adaptations. I mean, I know how Great Expectations will end, but I really don't care. So I want to rewatch that. I especially love the Bleak House part in that one because, like, I'm not gonna say, never mind. It's really, really lovely.
No, but kind of like the Lady Deadlock origin story.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
it's intense, but it's very, very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will probably more read than watch, but I would also just like to recommend there's a great mini series of The Way We Live Now from I think 2001, which when people have finished reading the book is really, really good. I haven't seen it for ages actually, but I am kind of tempted to rewatch it. It's got an amazing cast. It's got David Cisse, Masha McFadden. It's got Cillian Murphy, like before he was famous. Just it's really, and it's a really great adaptation. Really good look. Very, very, very well done. So I really recommend the adaptation of The Way We Live Now when people are done with the read long. It's well worth your time.
Yeah, I was thinking back, and it's been a decade since I've watched it, which is just wild. So when I finish, I definitely want to rewatch it.
Ooh, someone is saying To Walk Invisible, which is a really great biopic of the Brontes, which I would also recommend. Not enough people watch that film.
Yes.
And The Far From the Madding Crowd, 2015.
So good. So good.
I'm going to try actually There's a 1941 adaptation of Uncle Silas that's on YouTube. So hopefully me saying that doesn't make it get taken down. Oh, interesting. There's a podcast called Empire, and they have just done Seacole and Nightingale. So interesting. 2005 Bleak House. That's another one that is perfect for autumn or winter. Oh,
Very, very, very good, that one.
so our mutual friend adaptation. It's so funny. After seeing that, I always keep wanting to say Eugene Rayburn.
And a very good adaptation.
That has David Morrissey in it. That mutual friend. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, he's just fantastic in that.
He
Very,
is.
very good.
Yeah. Some actors they can do the Dickensian, the extreme characters that Dickens wrote without them seeming ridiculous.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the Dev Patel, David Copperfield. I keep hoping the library will get it. I know.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. So it plays havoc with the plot, but it's so fun because it is the great thing about that 2020 David Copperfield film is that watching it is the same feeling as reading a Dickens book because it's completely eccentric, it's really chaotic and fun. And it's just like wild. It's just like reading Dickens. Like it's the only adaptation I've ever seen of Dickens where I'm like, this captures the spirit of Dickens. Like you didn't just use the plot, you actually captured like what Dickens is. And I just love it very much. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Okay. I will have to get my hands on it. Maybe I could rent it on like YouTube or something. Oh, last year I watched Little Dora and my boys were completely obsessed with it. And they loved Andy Serkis's character. It's funny to watch the same British actors in Dickens adaptations, and then a lot appear in the Marple Poirot ones. It is fun when you watch different British things just to find all the connections.
Especially like I think in the 90s and 2000s there were like a series of actors who were just in like all of the period drama things.
Yes. I watched that 1940s Uncle Silas last year on YouTube. Worth a watch. Oh yeah, I want to try to watch it. Mm-hmm. For the horror fans, I recommend the series called Penny Dreadful. It's a mashup of many Victorian literary works: Dorian Gray, Frankenstein, Mina Harker, Van Helsing, Dr. Jekyll, etc. Wow.
It's very intense.
It is.
You need to be a real horror fan.
Yeah, I was like, I saw a trailer for it and I was like, this sounds really good, but also I think maybe it'd be a bit too scary for me.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried one episode and I was too traumatized.
That's why I think I'm probably not, I'm too chicken, but it does look like it's very well done. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This has been a delightful way to kick off Victober, and we're hoping to maybe do at least one more kind of live show towards the end. And I know, Jennifer, you're on your channel, you're planning on doing several Victober reading sprints, and
Yes.
Elena, maybe are you, or
maybe I haven't done anything yet.
So there will be more reading sprints happening. And yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.